Excellent. Well, welcome everyone to the Wednesday installment of Big If True for Disinformation Awareness Week. Really happy to be working alongside folks like Media Justice and United We Dream and Ultraviolet and the Disinfo Defense League and all kinds of different groups that have stepped up and stepped in to try to raise awareness about what is happening in our media ecosystem and how misinformation is making it difficult for us to get regular old information, just the kind of stuff you need to know in order to do the thing you want to do. And so today we're going to talk quite a bit about the role that arts and culture and different kinds of communicators play in helping people understand misinformation and disinformation. But then also, we really want to give people a sense that there's a role for everyone to play in raising awareness about disinformation. So I'm so happy that this week exists. And Katy just told me that it's also Media Literacy Awareness Week. So that's a great synergy here for what we are intending to do. And so by way of introductions, I'm going to go around and ask everybody to introduce yourself and the organization or the kind of work that you've been doing related to misinformation. And we'll start with you, Bridget.
Good morning, y'all. I am Bridget Todd. I'm the communications director with Ultraviolet, and I'm also the creator and host of a podcast on iHeartRadio called There Are No Girls on the Internet, where we dig into all of the ways that traditionally underrepresented voices, communities of color, women show up online. And right now we are working on an exciting new series all about, you guessed it, disinformation. So super excited to be here.
Can you tell me briefly what Ultraviolet does? Because I know they have a great resource out about how to report on women and candidates of color.
Yeah, Ultraviolet is a feminist organization that works to build meaningful political power that centers women and non-binary folks. And so we put out this great resource to really educate both people in the media and also everyday folks on how disinformation that relies on bias, things like women can't be trusted, or women make bad leaders, to continue this cycle of disinformation. So really trying to tease out some of the complexities of why disinformation is so insidious and what we can do to stop it.
Excellent. Love to hear it. Liz, we're going to go to you next. And I will screen share here and show people the awesome resource that you have put together while you introduce yourself.
Great. Hi, my name is Liz Prince. I'm a comic book artist, and Joan got me involved in this Choose Your Own Destiny comic about navigating disinformation during this particularly unique election cycle. And so the idea was kind of to try to get younger folks who either might not be voting age or know someone who is maybe on the fence about voting or is having a hard time navigating all the misinformation surrounding how to vote during this election. So it's kind of a fun play on that idea. I called it Dragons and Democracy and Dragons, kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons play. So I turned like the disinformation into like the kind of characters you might encounter in like a role-playing game, and then you play through the game to get to vote.
Excellent. And we would be remiss not to mention the fact that you are also an award-winning comic book artist that does amazing things for the youth. You've really the youths of today. And I just really love your I don't know if the memoir is the right idea, but the graphic novel Tomboy. Is that what a memoir means? Because I don't often know.
Yeah, it's basically me writing about my childhood and how gender stereotypes affected that. And I see like a really big correlation between stereotyping and disinformation, because they kind of work in the same vein, where it's like these preconceived notions that kind of undercut just the different ways that people actually really exist. So
Excellent. No, and I felt that when we were talking about the initial ideas behind what might go in the Democracy and Dragons comic, is that, yeah, so much of disinformation relies on people just making assumptions and following them through. And so that is something that we're going to continue to have a bit more of a discussion around that in a moment, because first I want to introduce Katy Byron from MediaWise. Let us know.
No, thank you so much for having me. Nice to meet Liz and Bridget as well, virtually, of course. I manage the MediaWise project at the Poynter Institute. Poynter is a journalism teaching nonprofit organization, and MediaWise, which is what I spend doing all day, every day, is a digital media literacy initiative. It started in 2018, focused on teaching teenagers how to sort fact from fiction online. But this year we expanded to college students with a first-time voter project in January called the MediaWise Voter Project, which we partnered with Joan and Liz on the comic with for that project, and are promoting that through that work as well. It's definitely first-time voter friendly. And we also have a MediaWise for Seniors program for people 50 and up that we launched in the middle of the pandemic in June because there was such a desperate need for that age group to be to get educational resources for identifying misinformation online.
Amazing. I think that, so many of the resources that you can get at the misinfographics.net, if you click in the upper left-hand corner, sorry, never learned my rights from my lefts, you'll see that there are voter resources available, and that will link you to the MediaWise MVP project, as well as many, many other things. And so let's talk a little bit about what makes people susceptible to misinformation narratives. One of the things that I love about the choose your own adventure style is there are ways in which you can get lost in the forest of disinformation, and then there are ways you can get back out. But one of the panels that I thought was really worth us digging into a little bit in terms of trying to get people to understand how repetition of information and just starting to get distracted and fall into the rabbit hole of more interesting and sensational storylines. Liz, I really love the way you treated this panel in particular. It's the grandma encounters a troll along the way. She decides to believe the troll. And, there's just this line, did you know that you can order kids on a popular furniture website? And the granddaughter's looking through like, dude, come on. And in the side here, the rumble is the sort of castle of democracy that she's trying to get to in order to vote. And she's like, well, what else do you know about this conspiracy, right? And, friends and family do decide to walk away, right? At that point, you're like, I don't know, Grandma, Wayfair probably is just trying to sell you a cabinet, not a child, right? And then, they just start, heck yeah, let's blast through some YouTube vids, right? And there's like a subtle commentary, I think, on the YouTube recommendation algorithm. Liz, can you tell me a little bit about what goes into creating and making this seem so simple, even though my explanation of it had to go on for 2 minutes? Like, I think you were really able to nail it there.
Well, I think that the great thing about comics as a narrative device is that you can do something like make a online troll as an actual troll, which kind of like adds this idea of like ridiculousness to it without having to spend a whole bunch of time describing like who that person is and what their motivations are. And so, creating the characters kind of around this like traditional, like almost like fairy tale, like the grandma's got like a Little Red Riding Hood thing going on. And, the whole idea behind that fairy tale is that like the grandma, there's an imposter. And so it's kind of like, oh, all right, like we can make these characters that are representing things that they believe to be true themselves, but just the way that they're presenting the information, like it makes it a little easier to be like, wait a second. Whereas, actually online when it's like, Patriot Storm Blitz.news, says,
which is a real URL, I'm sure.
Yeah, probably. Like the
either that or you just made it.
News. Yeah. I know it's going to be up by the end of this live stream. But, stuff like that, it's like, is it real? Do I want to spend the time having to figure out where it comes from? So it's a big opportunity to use comics to kind of get this type of information out. Information that maybe even seems like a little academic and almost like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Accessible.
Yeah,
accessible, right? It's readable.
Yeah, it's not a lot of.
Yeah, there's not a lot of fluff there, which is exactly what my business is, most in academia don't think about simplicity and messaging. And I was just retweeting the link here. And so if people are listening out there in radio land, please let everybody know that we are live here. But this is going to be available for the rest of the day, probably in perpetuity, because I don't know how to delete anything off the internet. But let's go with this theme of accessibility. Bridget, your work really is about breaking it down and making it so that a very general audience that maybe doesn't understand what disinformation is, how it can snake its way into common conversations. People don't understand that this is strategic communications work, right? And so your work in ultraviolet is also a kind of mirror of the kind of things that you have to think about in terms of like, how do we get our resources to new people? And misinformation operators and disinformers are thinking the same thing. So as you're trying to break down that process, what are the things that you're hoping to bring to the fore in your next set of your next series on disinformation?
Well, I think that's so true. And when you were showing Liz's comics, I love you're a genius. I love the use of graphic novel or graphics in this way, because it is so accessible. When I first started talking about disinformation or really even just thinking about the way it impacted my community, it was very personal for me. It was the beginning of COVID, and all of these people in my life who my whole life I had known to be smart, skeptical, thoughtful humans who I loved, started saying things about COVID that I knew weren't true. And I had to have this moment of, oh my God, people in my community are susceptible to being taken by some shady patriot.net Facebook page, right? And so, when I was thinking about how I tackled that issue just in my own personal life, I was very intimidated. I was like, I'm not a researcher. I'm not a scientist. I don't have a background in understanding and breaking down, these concepts around disinformation. And so that intimidation made me feel powerless. It made me feel like, well, what can I do to save my loved ones from this, shadowy, very enticing disinformation when I don't even know how to understand it myself? And honestly, finding resources that really broke it down for me and spoke to me and made me realize, actually, this is not that complicated for me to understand. Actually, if I can figure out ways of helping other people understand this in ways that use story, right? In ways that center the people who have dealt with it and have got to the other side, actually, it'll be a really good resource that helps people understand that they can get to the end and slay this disinformation dragon, themselves. And so, I remember the first time, Dr. Donovan, that I had you on the podcast, I was like, oh my God, I hope that I better do some research to brush up on all the academic jargon I am sure to get. And I was so relieved and refreshed to find out oh, I can understand this. If I can understand this, anybody can understand this. And if anybody can understand this, we can combat this together.
And I think that should be the role of an educator, right? Is to be able to break it down into digestible, understandable chunks. And what's really hard with media manipulation and disinformation is it is meant to trick you. And so people do feel either a sense of shame if they realize they've been duped, right? That might even lead to an impulse to double down and be like, no, I've believed this so long, it must be true. Or, we've definitely also had instances where people don't want to, admit that the things that they're sharing are a problem. But then in other instances, they know it's not true and they share it anyway. There's great research out there by Alice Marwick about why people share fake news. And it's just, sometimes it just feels good. Like people are sharing it because it confirms what they think about the world. And sometimes though, too, I should add that some of this disinformation does have at its base a kind of kernel of truth. Katy, can you describe some of the ways in which MediaWise has tried to get people attuned to how misinformation and disinformation shows up in their everyday lives? I love the fact that you are working with like AARP to try to get new folks to understand this crazy online world. So let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to go back to Liz's comic, and just really what you guys were talking about, making this digestible and not intimidating, I think is definitely one of our goals as well. And also, I like to say it's not rocket science to try and identify misinformation and disinformation. And we do that in one of our strategies really is very kind of quick hit tips. We do a lot of social content because people are spending lots of time on social media, right? So our @MediaWise handles are active across platforms. And we have a series of partnerships, like you mentioned, AARP, to really just kind of scale our work. We worked with them to create a webinar, a series of short videos that are on their fact tracker section of the website, aarp.com/fact tracker, and also created training materials for their volunteers to train AARP membership virtually for now. But we also have a series of partnerships with social media influencers and influential accounts. Like one of our most successful this year is with the Instagram account @KaleSalad, which is the most popular meme account on Instagram. And we created partnered posts together that went on the Kale Salad account and the MediaWise account. And those have gotten hundreds of thousands of views, and they're teaching media literacy tips. One other strategy we had this year that is still available free now and on the comic page, resources page that Joan mentioned, is a text message course. So an online course that you take by text message. Every day you get a text for 10 days teaching you media literacy skills and fact-checking skills. Very digestible, focused on first-time voter audience, and that's available free thanks to support from Facebook and our other funders as well. So there are, it's really important to us, and I think one way that we've reached, large scale with the MediaWise project of going where people are. So really focusing a lot of our educational resources being promoted on the platforms where people are spending so much time and through these sort of influencer account partnerships.
Can I say
Excellent.
something about that?
Yes, please.
I love that you're using memes, because I spoke earlier about like my family members and community members who have sort of been taken by COVID disinformation. It was memes that got them there, right? It was like these memes that they would see on these big accounts that would be like, oh, wait, maybe it is a hoax. Wait, maybe masks don't work. And I just love that you're, the disinformers and media manipulators know the power of memes and they're using memes. And I'm just so happy to see that you all are using memes for good to bring folks back to the other side.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say memes for good. That was going to be my joke. But it totally is. And one other thing worth mentioning on that is it's so interesting, the work that we're doing in disinformation, because it changes every day. So we had all these predictions, at the beginning of the year, what we're going to be one of the biggest kind of spreaders or types of misinformation or disinformation vehicles, and memes was one of them. And yes, it's been a big problem, but I would say video manipulation has been more significant than we anticipated, right? And not like that full-blown deep fake, but a cheap fake style, right? So we kind of had to twist and turn, what we were teaching through the course of the year. So we really have to be nimble. And so, like longer term curriculum development is something that we have steered away from. We have a number of online virtual courses that are, 4 modules maximum, and we continually are updating and changing them. All the links for those are in that about page on the Comic Strict website. But anyway, so I thought that was worth mentioning, because I think teaching to think more critically, so it's skills that can be applied on whatever you might find is essential, because you can teach based on a couple of examples, but the types of disinformation people might see could change tomorrow.
That is so true. I think that we are, I keep describing this moment as the Olympics of disinformation rather than the Super Bowl of disinformation, where there's just many, many events and there's many attempts. And I agree with you, the cheap fakes that we've been seeing, especially, like I'm not here to lie to nobody. Like Biden is prone to gaffes, right? He accidentally says things. He says the opposite of what he means. And sometimes he'll repeat disinformation that people have said about him. And those little snippets are just really easily clipped and recontextualized and just thrown into social media. We're like right now looking at this one cheap fake. Our team, Emily Dreyfus, is really doing a deep dive on the cheap fake around Biden saying they've created the most extensive voter fraud organization. Of course, he meant anti-voter fraud organization. And in the longer clip, he goes on and says, we have 1,000 lawyers standing by on call. Like if you see something, call our lawyers. But instead, he says this thing like, we've created a voter fraud organization. And that 24-second clip becomes the thing that goes viral. And it's important that when it goes viral, it's not just the case that we're worried about, oh, okay, some meme accounts are putting this out and it's funny, like the one where they replaced the song of Biden dancing to Despacito and replaced it with NWA's F the Police. Like that's kind of funny. I'm not gonna lie, like that's a pretty funny joke. And it's funny when it comes from accounts that are prone to doing funny things. It stops being funny when it's the president, right? And in this case, too, with the voter fraud organization, cheap fake, we're definitely seeing a very similar kind of tactic. And so, in some ways, the power of the presidency, I was talking with Yochai Benkler and Rob Ferris yesterday about their recent reports on the notion that the mail-in voting is somehow rigged. And they have a very large report out that that really shows that when the president says something, there's an entire machinery of communication that is behind making sure that what he says resonates and sticks. And we have very similar machinery in different professions, right? Journalism kind of has its own promotional schemas, and public health has promotional public health officials that are supposed to come out and be able to fight against these rising tides of disinformation. But for some reason, the volume never really gets cranked up on the things that matter, like timely, local, relevant information. Instead, social media really trains us to look at the sensational, the outrageous, the provocative, which I think goes right back to your point about why certain memes really resonate, right? So you have Instagram, which is kind of like a meme delivery system in a lot of ways, right? If you want to have a popular Instagram account, you better not be posting pictures of your supper every night, right? Like my cat is cute, but my cat isn't going to carry 500,000 followers. So something like Kale Salad as an account is really crafted in order to deliver short bits of information. And most people go to it because they expect things that are funny, not necessarily informative. And I want to show this video of the meme that they did with MediaWise, because I think it'll be kind of fun for people to watch. So share screen, do this, click that.
While you do that, it's worth mentioning, Joan, that we actually offer with MediaWise digital media literacy training for influencers and accounts holders that have large followings, in the millions. That's something that we offer as a service and are going to be doing with TikTok. And we've done some with YouTube creators, and we'll hopefully doing more next year.
Me and Liz are going to sign up. Me, Liz, and Bridget are going to sign up.
I'm
ready to be
this.
trained.
It's a new program for us, but it's a big deal because I see it as a very scalable way to combat misinformation, because the accounts that are very large that share misinformation, in particular celebrity accounts, I think a lot of the time they don't know that they're doing it, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have some sort of basic digital media literacy and fact checking training for those account holders, I think it could be really valuable.
Excellent. All right, so let's watch this vid and then we'll get some final thoughts from everyone. See if this volume will work.
This is from a TikTok trend with the ghost. I don't know if anyone's seen that, but
I love it.
With the music. It's better with the music.
Right? You can kind of see the MediaWise in the background on the shades, right? But it's, it's short and goofy and fun and people may be moved. And I think that that's one of the points, is that we do all of this not necessarily just to inform people. We do it to move people off the couch and into a space either where they feel empowered, they feel able and informed enough to respond to folks. They don't just wave it away. And then hopefully what it's doing is also animating people to learn how to vote in their area and what the process is, and where they can either drop off their ballot, or most places are right now saying that mail-in voting, it's a little bit past the time to mail in your ballot, but if you haven't done it, do it today. And most places have different kinds of drop-off boxes or places that you can vote early at this point. So in the interest of time, because I love talking to all three of you, I could do this all day, but unfortunately they don't let me do this as a job. Just like the bonus lunch hour thing I get to do. So I'm just going to do in a little round robin style. Any plans for November 3rd? Like, what are you going to be doing? What's that looking like for you? We'll start with Liz.
Hoping and wishing and praying, gonna get my coven together and we'll just send our energy out. I'm just kidding. I'll be at home because I'm always at home with my cats and my toads, and I've already voted. My ballot was accepted, so I'm good to go on that. And I hope that the rest of you have either already voted or have your plans to vote in place, because it's super duper important, people. I grew up as a punk kid. I know that apathy towards the government is a real thing, but let's try to change that for our future, please.
I appreciate that. I'm definitely in that voter apathy camp. Like, can't we do more? And I think the answer is yes. And, we can do this and other things. Bridget.
My voting plan is set. So thank you for that reminder. My plan for the 3rd involves drinking heavily, probably vodka. We'll see what happens. No, kidding.
Are you an agent of Putin? Like, what's going on here? No, I'm just kidding.
That's one thing the Russians got right is vodka.
That and borscht, right? Yeah, I can hear you.
But then also, expectation setting around the timeline between election day and when we have a clear winner. I think it could be longer than folks expect. And so just remembering to remind my online community and my folks, my people, that it might take some time for every vote to be counted, but that, it's important that every vote is counted and that we just got to be patient. Just kind of reiterating that messaging for myself and also for my people.
Excellent. Katie, you want to close us out?
Yeah, echoing what Bridget said, we'll be doing a lot of social media kind of debunking and as real time as possible on election day, but very much the days after. And also this whole kind of pre-bunk theme we've been doing as well, warning people about to expect misinformation about election results and that they might take longer than the traditional one night or 2 days or even a week. It could be a couple of weeks. We don't know is the bottom line, and really kind of trying to raise awareness that this could be a long haul. We really don't know.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think we don't know, which is why we need to temper our excitement with a little bit of, patience and stay the course, knowing that an accurate count is always better than something that's quick and dirty, which often disinformation is it doesn't tend to be based in a lot of facts, and it tends to rile up our emotions. So I just want to thank you all, Katy, Liz, Bridget. Amazing conversation today. Disinformation Awareness Week carries on. So use the hashtag #DisruptDisinfo to take a look at the other events that are happening today and every day, and follow along with Ultraviolet, Media Justice, United We Dream, so that you are informed and able to participate in the week's events. And with that, have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.